Good morning, students. Welcome to the English session. Today, we shall deal with the lesson Evans tries an O level. Now, before we start, we need to ponder over the question should criminals in prison be given the opportunity of learning and education? Now, analyzing the title, Evans tries an O level. What is an O level? O level is an ordinary level. That is the lowest of the three levels of standardized British exam in a secondary school subject. The other levels are A level, which is known as advanced level, and S level, which is known as scholarship level. Evans Tries an O level is a story of a criminal named Evan. In this story, Colin Dexter shows how an individual is able to shake the entire police department with his cleverness and ingenuity. The story begins with a criminal named Evans. Evans is already famous for breaking out from many prisons, thus he is called Evans the Break by the police officials. He is now at Oxford Prison. We see that the secretary of the examination board gets a call from HM Prison's governor. He learns that Evans has begun with night classes in O-level German. Thus, he wishes to get an academic qualification. So they all make the necessary arrangements for the same. On inquiry, they learn Evans has no record of violence, instead, he is rather amusing. Finally, the cell of Evans was turned into the examination room. A parson from St. Mary Mag's was to work as invigilator. The governor did not tell the secretary that Evans the Break had already escaped from prison 3 times. He would have done so from Oxford Prison if there had not been unrest in the maximum security establishment up north. The governor is very vigilant throughout, as he knows what Evans is capable of pulling off. Thus, the authorities do their best to help Evans excel at the exam. They hire a German tutor for him. He teaches Evans for 6 months. Evans even befriends him during that time. The tutor wishes him luck but feels that he does not stand a chance to clear the exam. However, Evans tells him that they may surprise everybody. Thus, the day of the exam arrives and his cell is being inspected now. The officers, Mr. Jackson, the senior prison officer on D Wing, and Mr. Stevens, a burly, surly-looking man, only recently recruited to the profession, take away anything that he may use to injure himself. Mr. Jackson mockingly addressed Evans as iron steel. Evans' face was unshaven, and he requested Mr. Jackson to let him shave himself. Jackson instructed Stevens to make sure that he took his razor out of the cell. Mr. Jackson told Evans that he had got half an hour to smarten himself. They try to take his filthy hat away, but Evans insists, saying that it is his lucky charm. Moreover, they also bugged Evans' cell for the governor to listen through everything. Reverend Stuart McCleary, the Invigilator, left his house at 8:45 a.m. He wore a long black overcoat and a shallow-crowned clerical hat. He carried a small brown suitcase which contained all that he would need for his invigilation duties. The 2-hour examination was scheduled to start at 9:15 a.m. 2 small square tables were set opposite each other. 2 hard chairs were placed in front of the tables. Jackson would be watching him like a hawk. Just before leaving his cell, Jackson wished Evans good luck. They searched the invigilator and the contents of the suitcase. Mr. Jackson was puzzled to find a semi-inflated rubber ring. McCleary explained that he suffered from hemorrhoids when he sat down for a long time. Then he found a paper knife at the bottom of the case. Very politely, he took it away. Then he was taken to Evans' cell to carry out the exam. The examination started a bit late. The governor heard the voices of the invigilator and the examinee. It was now 9:20. Evans objected to the presence of Stevens as it disturbed his concentration. The governor ordered Jackson to get Stevens out of that cell. Then the examination began. At 9:25 there was a great calm. At 9:40 a.m. the examination board rang through. An assistant secretary informed the governor that there was a correction slip which the dealing hand had forgotten to place in the examination package. The governor put him straight through to Mr. Jackson in D Wing. Meanwhile, he checked whether the phone call was fake. He dialed the number of the examination board but heard only the staccato bleeps of a line engaged. 2 minutes later, the governor heard some whispered communications in the cell. McCleary was dictating the correction. Then he received a phone from the magistrate's court. They needed a prison van and a couple of prison officers for a remand case. At 10:45 a.m., everything was still all right. Evans, with his pen between his lips, sat staring straight in front of him towards the door, seeking some inspiration from somewhere. Opposite him sat McCleary. Evans asked if he could put a blanket round his shoulders as it was a bit chilly there. McCleary told Evans to be quick about it. At 10:51 a.m., Stevens was surprised to see a grey blanket draped around Evans' shoulders. He frowned slightly. He looked at the examinee more closely. The examination was almost over now, but something still gnawed away quietly in the governor's mind. He reached for the phone once again. At 11:22 a.m., the governor advised Stevens to accompany McCleary to the main prison gates. He was to make absolutely sure that the door was locked on Evans after McCleary had left the cell. Stevens escorts McCleary to the main gates. His long black overcoat encouraged the illusion that he had suddenly grown slimmer. He re-entered D Wing and opened the peephole of Ivan's cell. He saw a man sprawled in Ivan's chair. The front of his closely cropped, irregular tufted hair was covered with red blood, which had dripped already through the small black beard. It was now spreading over the white clerical collar and down into the black clerical front. He found the Invigilator lying injured. Stevens shouted wildly for Jackson. The words penetrated McCleary's ears. He gave a low moan and tried to speak. Police and ambulance were called in. McCleary slowly raised himself. He found the German question paper on the table. He told Jackson to get the governor. He claimed to know where Evans was. McCleary drew the governor's attention to the German question paper. A photocopied sheet had been superimposed over its last page. Originally, it was blank. The German text was translated. It made an interesting reading. It contained the plan of action. Detective Superintendent Carter came out and greeted the governor. Before the governor could explain anything, McCleary told the officer to go to Elsfield Way. The governor was still concentrating on the last line of the German text. The word Neugraben troubled him. The governor was angry at Jackson and Stevens. Evans had managed to conceal a false beard, a pair of spectacles, a dog collar, and all the rest of his clerical paraphernalia. He also had a weapon with which he hit McCleary across the head. The governor sat back and lit a cigarette. It had been a beautifully laid plan. However, it was carelessness of Evans to leave the question paper behind. The governor hoped to get Evans back with the help of the clues. Superintendent Carter informed him that McCleary had spotted Evans driving off along Elsfield Way, but had lost him at the Herington roundabout. He must have doubled back into the city. The governor said that he might be on his way to Newbury. He asked Carter if they had managed to get McCleary to hospital all right. Carter replied that he was in Radcliffe then. A few minutes later, the governor rang the Radcliffe and inquired about the parson who came there in their ambulance from Elsfield Way. The governor was shocked to learn that the fellow had disappeared when the ambulance got there. A quarter of an hour later, they found McCleary securely bound and gagged in his study in Broad Street. He had been there since 8:15 a.m. when 2 men called. Finally, the governor puts together the missing pieces of the puzzle. He learns that the Invigilator was Ivan's friend, and he swapped places with him and fooled everyone. Evans had impersonated McCleary and stayed in. After a gentle stroll round the center of Chipping Norton, Evans returned to the Golden Lion Hotel. A smart new hat concealed his hair. His chin was irritatingly sore and red because of the beard that he had to stick with plaster. He gave instructions to the receptionist, smiled at her, and went to his room. He was shocked to find the governor sitting on his narrow bed. Evans was visibly shaken. He confessed that the correction slip had ruined him. The correction slip provided the name of the hotel and the exact time the exam started. Evans asked the governor how did he know which golden lion it was. Governor said he used the same method, index number 313, center number 271. The six-figure reference 313 bar 271 lands one bang in the middle of Chipping Norton. The governor then asked him how he got all that blood to pour over his head. Evans explained how they had used the little rubber ring for it. They used pig's blood and mixed 3.8% trisodium citrate to stop it clotting. The governor shook his head in reluctant admiration. They walked down the stairs. Evans said that he had many friends. Though he had no visitors or letters, he always had his German teacher. The governor said the teacher was from technical college. Evans seemed to enjoy all this. He asked if they had checked it. The governor becomes happy, thinking his game is over, and sends him to a prison van. The receptionist told the governor that the van was outside. A silent prison officer handcuffed the recaptured Evans. Then the two men sat on the back seat of the prison van. Evans said that O-level Italian classes were coming up next September. The governor said that perhaps he might not be with them. Evans pondered over it and thought that, yeah, he wouldn't. As the prison van turned right from Chipping Norton onto the Oxford Road, the silent police officer unlocked the handcuffs. He leaned towards the driver and asked him to move on fast. The driver inquired in a broad Scots accent where they should make for. Evans suggested going to Newbury. Evans had the last laugh. He had escaped from the prison once again, as the prison officer and the prison van were also part of his plan. Finally, he becomes a free man. To sum up, Evans tries an O-level is an interesting clash between criminal and the law enforcement and how a person's wit can take him very far. Now, the summary of the story. Evans was put in the Oxford prison at Carfax for his criminal records, including the 3 jailbreaks that he had successfully committed. We do not exactly know what the charges against him were. It is most likely he was the master brain of a gang of robbers or was just a one-man robber who was greatly skilled in impersonating other people and thus made an income out of that. However, London police had no other choice than putting him in the most secure Oxford prison where jailbreaks were not at all common. Evans was aware of it too. Seeing that he was in all sense trapped for life, Evans made a new plan to escape. Outwitted the police authorities and managed to slip out of the prison. James Roderick Evans is a boy of deep intelligence, planning, resourcefulness, wit, and wisdom and is put in the Oxford prison. He starts learning German and is permitted to appear for O-level test in a separate and well-guarded cell. All the unauthorized items are taken away from him. He is put under a strict invigilation duty by the prison staff. The governor goes on making inquiries at every short intervals. The examination passes smoothly, but Evans pretends to be the bleeding parson. He is taken to the hospital. But for all his careful and cunning strategies, he is arrested by the governor in a hotel. Even then, he succeeds to slip out from the clutches of the gullible governor. Thus, we have come to the end of the session. Thank you and have a nice day.